really valuable conversation. I was able to talk to a couple of tables, and we'll highlight some of those speaking points. It's pretty loud. You can hear me, right? Okay. All right, everybody. You ready to talk, share your info? So for the first speaking point, overcoming resistant people who can undermine the process, we had a great conversation at the table up here. There was a lot of conversation about transparency and having conversations and understanding point of views of people who are resistant, and making it less emotional and tying it back to the business, making it really, factual based instead of, I just don't want to do this. And then I wanted to have Peta just speak to something. She mentioned that they take an angle of context versus control, which I think was really interesting. So if you could just explain that a little bit.
Hi, Peta, Netflix, and this is one of the core tenets of our culture, where we're very big on providing context over control. And that means we're, never mind myself, but my superiors and the people that work for me are never in a position of, well, this is what my boss said, so we just gotta do it, because that doesn't get anybody buying into the idea and really supporting it, and then becoming actual advocates for whatever the initiative. And talking about process specifically, it's about talking to people and getting them to understand from an upstream as well as a downstream look at the workflow of how their participation can make the work better. And better can mean things like efficiency, better can mean quality, better can be cheaper, can be faster. And it's really important, we find, that giving people the information is a lot of the tools that they need to actually get on board and buy into it, and then they're actually part of the solution instead of digging in their heels and and stopping things. And we also talk a lot about how things are. It's always somebody else mentioned it, one of the presenters, about it's always a work in progress. The goal is that nothing is perfect. If we wait to make things perfect, and I think everybody here knows this, it'll never get done. So it's really important to get people to understand that we want feedback. We want to hear when things aren't working, and that doesn't mean that we stop what we're doing so much as tell us what's not working so that we can look at revising and constantly moving things forward instead of looking at a moment of stopping and then recalibrating. The end.
Thank you. What about this table? Can you guys share some insight that you had come out of your conversation? Who wants the mic? Anybody? No?
We talked a little bit about I think we were a little off topic, but we talked about collaboration across offices, because some of us have to work with teams that are not all located in one place. And how do you do that effectively? How do you train so that everyone's using, the same naming conventions and things like that? And we talked a little bit about structure and traditional versus some non-traditional. I know you mentioned embedded is what you guys do, which that's a really interesting concept to me. So I don't, anything else, guys? Okay.
Thank you. Sure. Okay, I'll move it along to the next one because I know we're trying to make up some time here. So integrating people and technology, often a challenge with creatives, but not as hard as you think. I'm going to come over to this table where we were talking about really getting buy-in from, as many people as you can, especially the ones that can tend to be more difficult. If the difficult ones are bought in, pretty much everyone else will be very likely to be bought in as well. Anybody want to speak to that conversation?
So I talked about this a little bit earlier this morning, but the biggest thing is really getting a champion to help you kind of sell in the idea. And I was telling a story about how someone who I thought was really going to be very negative and not very on board with the new system that we were rolling out actually turned out to be one of the biggest champions. And so for me, I'm kind of using him as an example because everyone knows that he's a little bit grumpy and not that easy to please. But because he's such a champion of it, he's really going out and selling it for me. So that's helping a lot in getting everyone else on board and excited.
Anybody else have something insightful to share from that conversation? Anybody over here? Thanks.
We talked a little bit about the value of metrics and talking to the team about helping them understand that the data we're asking them to enter can also then be used to justify more assets for them. So if they're feeling harried, they're feeling overworked, these data points that we're asking them to capture can be the thing that gets them the help that they need. And it's also can be very useful when it comes to the annual evaluations. If you can point to a hard number, I've done 42% more of this as opposed to a lot more, it's a lot more persuasive. So framing it as something that in the long run will help them, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, I think that really can tie to the ROI, not only of a project, but to the staff itself, which is always super beneficial. Okay, and then the last topic was about org charts. Anybody over here want to share anything that they learned regarding org of a certain organization? You didn't? Oh no. No? Complain about the org? What's wrong with the org? What are the issues? Share one that was a common thread through all of you.
We each had our own challenges, so I don't know that.
Okay, fair enough. What about you guys? Juliana, do you have anything interesting regarding company org? Did you get there?
Your creative operations doesn't report through marketing.
Well, my creative operations is actually through the COO, so through the operations teams, because it is way more operationally oriented. And then there is a marketing kind of team and a marketing component. And what's interesting is that as those two kind of converge, there's a bit of a dotted line that happens in terms of creative direction at the top. So it does sort of kind of, maybe it's like a rainbow kind of org chart going from one side to the other. But it seems to work in the context of our business and what the business needs are.
That's really interesting. I'm actually curious, is anyone else's area of the business tied closer to operations than it is to marketing? No? Oh, you are? Yeah. Okay. Do you want to share anything about that?
It's maybe. So my case is probably a little unique as I come from commercial photo studios, which is almost entirely operational. Most recently, I ran a creative studio that had creative directors, art directors, that component to it, but I had the luxury of reporting directly to the COO, so there wasn't a lot of sort of touchy-feely having to justify. It was really there. We had the metrics to justify what we were doing, and we worked very well together, pulling together the entire creative team. So once you're able to cut directly to C-suite, things get a lot easier.
The objectives, I would say once you're in a COO organization, the objectives are very clear. With the CMO, it can be a little more, gray area.
It's all about numbers with the COO. Okay, I'm going to take one more table and then we'll wrap it up. What about you guys over here? Org insight? You didn't get there? Anybody else get there? Sounds like you had some great conversations on points 1 and 2. All right, well, we'll wrap it up and keep it moving. Thank you, everybody.